Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on board. It is an honor and pleasure to deliver the welcome address. My name is Kanchi Batra, and it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this expert webinar titled Denmark India, a Green Strategic Partnership. I'm very happy and honored to welcome all the distinguished speakers, His Excellency Mr. Freddie Spen, Ambassador Shashank will be joining us in next 10-15 minutes, Mr. Yarl and Dr. Sheetal Sharma. You all are here because you understand and believe that the future is green and it's here. We need all actors working together to pursue a sustainable path that links economic growth and environmental stewardship. The sustainable journey that we all need to take is in everybody's interest, even if it may sometimes demand short-term sacrifice. The Diplomatist is extremely proud to be marking its 25th anniversary, a significant milestone that we have achieved. We like to think that our 25 years of success can be attributed to a wholehearted commitment to our core values, most importantly, our commitment to our employees and our service commitment to you, our readers, viewers, and partners. As our progress is rewarding, we are very excited to maintain this trajectory. I truly believe that our passion will help us build on the solid business foundation that we have laid with commitment, respect, and a sustainable approach. Our business development team, myself included, under the direction of our publisher, have prepared a slate of presentations, panel discussions, and various other opportunities to interact with partners and peers for updates on the latest developments in the global arena. As always, we continue to be focused on the primary mission to offer opportunities for business, networking, and industry influence. Last year, India and Denmark decided to take the partnership to a new level. That is a strategic partnership. It is no secret that Denmark is known for having a lot of expertise in sustainable development, renewable energy, and circular economy. It is also evident that green energy has gained traction recently. Developing and deploying alternative forms of energy has become a vital concern over the past several years. Some forms of green energy have been around for years, even decades. That's where Diplomatist comes in, providing a dynamic platform for knowledge sharing and professional networking. We will continue to hold such online and on-site events in the remaining part of the year as we continue to celebrate our 25th anniversary. With that, I will be introducing the chair for today's discussion, Professor Dr. Sheetal Sharma, Center for European Studies, School of International Studies, Royal Nehru University. I happened to meet Professor Sharma recently at one of the networking events. Her remarks immediately caught my attention, and I'm very glad that she accepted and agreed to chair this very important discussion. Thank you, Professor Sharma. Pleasure to have you with us. You may kindly start the proceedings now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanchi, so much for this invitation. First of all, good morning and good afternoon to everyone, especially the panelists, His Excellency Freddie Sir and Yarl. You're located in Copenhagen, I can understand. And I'm so happy to be part of this panel discussion, and that too as a chair. I don't know how much authority I have as a chair, but then my role is as good as a panelist because I've been given 10 minutes to speak and chair the session. But Kanchi told me, that ma'am, you have to be very strict with time. So that's one part of the story. But the other part of the story is that I'm going to talk about the title of the panel discussion, which is India-Denmark Green Strategic Partnership. Now, I belong to academic world and tend to look at the world from a theoretical lens, from a perspective which helps us to understand and locate the ideas, events, phenomena, whatever you may say, in a practical context. So we tend to bring together theory and practice, that how far when we talk of something, it can be brought into practice, and from practice, what do we learn as a feedback, and that can be put into theory, and then a kind of circle which feeds into one another. Now, if I talk about Denmark, I know we have a very good panel going to talk about Denmark and India relationship and strategic partnership. But from Indian perspective, I'm going to flag certain concerns which we have about energy security and green partnership. Now, as a developing country, there are certain questions that we have in our mind about our development, about our energy need, about our energy security, energy independence, and diversification. Before I move on to this particular set of questions that I raised just now, I would like to draw your attention towards the first stage of industrialization, or I would say, particularly after India's independence. There was a kind of linear transition towards energy. The kind of energy resources that we had and the use of energy resources, particularly coal and oil. And these are non-renewable, and we had our own share of benefits out of it, as well as some of the negative or disadvantages of using the renewable energy sources and greater dependence upon it, import of energy sources and all these things. Now, gradually after 1990s, with the era of liberalization, there was a small transition, although of course in theoretical sense, we call it as a disruption, but there was an attempt towards understanding the other sources as well. And at the same point of time, imagine the world is also transiting towards the renewable energy sources after the oil crisis, finding new ways of energy dependence and other things. And then the third stage comes as a paradigm shift in the energy sector, where in the paradigm shift we see a complete transition or a commitment to complete transition to renewable energy sources. And within this transition, this 75 years journey of post-independence India, we have seen from linearity to disruption to a paradigm shift. And now India is an emerging power. I would say Ambassador Saab has already joined us. He would say, Sheetal, it's not an emerging, it is already emerged to large extent, and we are a force to reckon with, that India cannot go unnoticed. And a lot hinges upon India's economic progress in next 20, 50 years, even in the economic sense, or you may say in the global politics or on the global chessboard. Now what? Now we are confronted with three important questions. Number one is energy security. That is how we are going to manage the energy sources and be secure in the future. From being an importer, how do we see ourselves to be at least energy self-sufficient, if not an exporter in the near decade or so? Number two, we have to focus upon energy access. And by access, I mean providing energy or power to the areas remotest in area at the same time at the affordable prices. So from energy security, we have to see or ensure energy equity for people living in remote areas with less resources at their disposal, and at least energy which is affordable. And the third one, which very well blends into these two first questions, and also with the development agenda that India has in front of, for next 2-3 decades, is energy sustainability. And energy sustainability, I know Yal is going to talk about, he is representing Concito here, and he's going to talk about that climate change. Now, how India is going to manage these three important questions. Number one, addressing its development agenda, not put a brake on the process of industrialization, for which we need continuous supply of fuels, energy, and power. At the same time, managing and addressing the energy or divide that is existing in India. To a certain extent, it has been taken care of in the last 1 decade. You have latest statistics with you. And the third one is about the sustainability, that at the same point of time, these are two opposing forces. One, development at the cost of climate, another one, sustainable development and protecting the climate as well. So how do we address these two issues which sometimes seem to be contradicting one another? Now, in this particular context, I propose a 3 or 4D model, which I would say emerges out of development. The issue of development must address the diversification of resources, D1. Diversification, that is, of an energy basket, and over a period of time, we have to be very progressive in the sense of relying more on the renewable and replacing the non-renewable and over dependence upon the conventional sources of power that India has been using so far. Number two, decentralization. That is, of generation of power, at the same time consumption of power from the hands of not just the public or private, but a perfect combination of PPP model. The third D is decarbonization, which deals with the question of sustainability and reducing our carbon footprint. That is to use low carbon energy fuels and all these things. So diversification, decentralization, decarbonization, and finally distribution. That is, how do we understand that everyone in the process of globalization, development, and industrialization, at least in India, I'm saying India right now, I'm keeping India in focus, that gets to have a fair share of energy, or at least power or resources, which are at the center of this entire agenda of development. Now, finally, coming on to the last part, I think I'm just given 10 minutes, and I would try to conclude and raise certain questions and request panelists also to keep those questions in mind while addressing the audience. That why this kind of transition is coming about. There is a greater emergence of environmental ethic over the last 2-3 decades. Although, of course, it started in the West quite a bit 2 or 3 decades earlier as compared to India, but at least I can say there's a tendency of emergent environmentalism in general among masses, and that's a global concern now. But among all other concerns, sometimes this gets subsumed under the broader issues of security, of other greater issues which confront the developing countries like India particularly. But primarily, what are the drivers that are bringing about change? One is the policy and the regulations that are changing. Number two, over dependence upon the conventional energy resources is also putting a heavy pressure on the bills. Number three, the private sector, since liberalization, has started taking initiatives into the process of developing certain powerhouses and also looking for alternate resources of energy. And fourth is the emergent environmentalism that I just mentioned is about the awareness that is coming from the grassroots level and a bottom-up approach, which is putting or exerting pressure upon the policymakers and governments of respective countries and states to look for alternate energy sources. Although drivers are there, but the task is not as simple as it seems to be, at least in the case of my society or India, because of certain problems of infrastructure, problems of lack of investment, problems of lack of understanding and awareness about the resources. And at the same time, sometimes during the push of developmental questions, the environment, climate, and other kind of things which are very pertinent, sustainable goals, they tend to get a small beating. I'm not saying a complete, but at least to a certain extent are pushed aside in the process of aggressive development and meeting the goals that are there for development of our society. So within this broad context, I would say that there is a lot of scope for India and Denmark to come together. And both Excellency and y'all are going to talk about how we are going to actually materialize this strategic partnership, not just in terms of its spirit, but not just in terms of its letter, but in spirit. And as our Prime Minister has already said, that Denmark has skill and we have got scale. So how can we actually strike a balance and a synergy between these two entities and try to look forward to a future which is green? And Denmark is exemplary in the sense of introducing renewables, and then although of course it's yet an energy importer country, but almost 70% plus energy dependence is upon renewable, out of which 60 is wind. So I'm very happy that such kind of synergies, such kind of partnerships or collaborations can come up in future, and they can also guide and also contribute effectively, substantially to our agendas of development, which are related to Make in India. Even if you are developing something, there is a transfer of technology, or there is an exchange of expertise or ideas. At least we are contributing and doing some substantial gains in the areas which are the flagship programs of our current government or dispensation, such as smart cities or clean water, green energy, climate change, and many such programs which are there in the future for us to unfold and meet the development agenda. Thank you so much. And as chair of this session, my task is to invite the next speaker, and I'm happy to invite now His Excellency Mr. Freddy Swane, Ambassador of Denmark to India, to deliver his address. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, and I'm truly honored by your invitation to address the audience about our Green Strategic Partnership, and happy to see many familiar faces, Ambassador Shashank, Jarl Krausing, and Kanchi, of course, and with you, Mrs. Sharma. Let me put you in the context of why we have the Green Strategic Partnership and what is the kind of perspective of this Green Strategic Partnership. Because I think you have to understand this is unique. Nobody else in the world have had this kind of strategic partnership. Denmark does not have it. India does not have it. So when we were looking into how to combine all the challenges that you so ferociously, if I may say so, Dr. Sharma alluded to, then we were looking into how can we help India, the scale of India, how can we bring our skills into India? And our point of departure was that we wanted to really to connect with the missions of the Indian government, the mission leading to a new India where each and every person has the right to health, to education, and a better life. And how that will, of course, leave behind a huge impact on the climate, on the planet. So therefore we said, okay, let's see if we can be part of that transformation, but securing that India is moving in a sustainable way. And I don't accept, Dr. Sharma, the idea that economy and development are two opposite sizes. It's wrong, and it's not what I'm feeling. I think you were alluding to a theoretical point of view. What we have said to the Indian government, and they have accepted that, is that of course India has the right to develop, but you don't have the right, to put it very bluntly, the right to do and commit exactly the same mistakes that we did in our part of the world. That's why we bring in our skills. We would like India really to grow its economy, but in a green and sustainable way. That's the point. And this Green Strategic Partnership and the action plan that has been made public some months ago or so is setting out very clear and well-defined KPIs as to what should be achieved within a number of different tracks. The more important tracks are energy, and of course water, and then climate and finance. These are the most important tracks seen from our point of view. But the green transition as such is much more encompassing than those four tracks, but they are the main tracks. If we look into energy, Denmark, as you rightly said, there are a lot of discussions and a lot of numbers floating around and so forth, but there's no doubt that the green transition in Denmark has been a success. It has been rewarding. It has created a far richer, more wealthier society, and it has helped us really to survive and move away from a more black fossil fuel driven path to a greener future. We haven't yet really accomplished the total trajectory, but we are on a good way. And I think we stand out as an example of how you successfully can undertake a green transformation. India, I mean, if you take all the most important parameters, how much electricity will an Indian on average consume a year? It's 1/3 of the global average per capita. The emission of CO2 is the same. So 1/3 is seems to be really the big number on your side. So how do we help you? We would like to bring in all our skills, whether it's green hydrogen, power to X, energy islands, resilient, robust grids, which is perhaps the most important part of the green trajectory in the future. It's not about how you generate renewables, but it's how you are really distributing all these things. And that is going to be the biggest leap that hopefully India will take in the future. So for energy, we support it, and I'm really personally extremely happy that John Kerry accepted the idea that the Biden administration's announced reduction of their CO2 emissions equals or is equaling the 450 gigawatt of renewables in India. That's a sectorial approach. Of course, India in the future will have to look into the industrial sector. And the big issue is here that a lot of countries, including Denmark, are asking for a phasing out of coal. It's not just phasing out an energy source. In India, it has a societal impact. And therefore, you also have to do calculations on that. Our Prime Minister has been very clear, and when she gave a speech at the Raisina Dialogue in April, she really mentioned that we will need to have a just and a fair development for countries like India. So it can be done, and I don't see any kind of opposition to develop an economy. It's not either to grow or to stay green or become green. It has to be a joint road, a joint trajectory, and it's possible. I'm pretty sure that India at some point of time will overtake the rest of the world. You have 1.3 billion people. You have, and I think it can be verified, and I'm pretty sure that India already has really delivered on the Paris agreements and so forth. What is at stake is, of course, how to grow and how to secure that each and every aspiring Indian will have access to the same kind of lifestyle that we have developed in our world. It's not about driving huge cars. It's about having a fridge or and so forth. That's important. How to get pumps into India that are consuming less electricity. And, you know, we can do all that. So India is really on the track. India needs finance, they need technology. Early on, the Western powers like US and others were sending second-hand, even Danish companies were sending second-hand machinery and production lines to India. And they were phased out in Europe and elsewhere, and that was sent to India. I've seen it with my own eyes. That's not the way forward. We have to bring the scale and skills to India so we bring in the best technology. Because if India is failing, the rest of the planet will be failing as well. You mentioned scale of India, opportunities and challenges. Skills meaning solutions of Denmark. Very, very important. We have added now 2 other S's. Speed, because urgency is there. We need to really tackle the climate changes. We need to bring India on board. We need also to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. And the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, in fact, are kind of agenda, at least to some part, of really being able to deliver on an effective battle against the climate changes. So that's one. The other part, the 4th S is scope. So what we do in India, bilaterally or jointly in a multilateral setting, could be COP26, is of importance. The scope of that is so important, so it goes beyond that. So the 4 S's are very, very important. And the 4 Ds that you mentioned, I can subscribe to all of them. And when I look into how things are developing out here and the pressure from outside, I think we have to realize that India will do what is needed internationally and globally, but they will do it in their own way. So they will not accept pressure, seen from my point of view, from, let's say, the Western powers that coal should be phased out. Where we should help is helping the Indian railways to use electricity to become a green mover. Help Indian companies, because the big Indian companies will be those who are going to absorb the newest technology. They will absorb all the millions or billions of US dollars that will be floating in. And don't forget that back in 2009, COP15 in Denmark, there was a commitment, and we have never delivered on the 100 billion US dollars. We did not even pay the bill for it. So we are lacking behind. And therefore, I don't think, or that's a personal view, I don't think we can come and tell a country like India, you have to do exactly the same as we are doing. we have to tell India, if you want like to help all of us and survive as well, then use the best technologies, use the platform like the Green Strategic Partnership. And that's the way forward. And I do hope that this Green Strategic Partnership, which is now a template here in Delhi, everybody's talking about it, even the Americans are looking into it. So this is not just nice political statements, it's really something that we will be delivering upon. Our Minister for Climate, Energy and Utilities are coming to India in early September, where we are really combining these kind of ambitions to secure that the big players, the big Danish businesses who are in many fields a world leader within their specifics, that they will help India bringing their skills to India. Secondly, we will also secure that we will look into the scale, will help India, inspire India to do the needed energy transition. And I think the key for the time being of India's transition, green transition, lies in the energy sector. And there's no other country in the world where than Denmark who has the experience, has seen the benefits of it, and we don't see development as a kind of in opposition to being green and sustainable. Denmark is an example of how you can combine that. And I'm pretty sure that Jarl and others will say Denmark grew our economy quite considerably, and still we maintained the energy consumption as well as the CO2 footprint. Can be done, should be done, and don't really fall into the academical trap of saying that we cannot develop in parallel with being sustainable and green. You can, you should, and you are really, really forced to do it. If you continue that kind of thinking, you will not reach where you're supposed to reach. And if India is failing, is not reaching this goal, the whole world will not survive. So, so don't have this kind of old-fashioned idea. Sorry to be very blunt about it, but I've heard it so many times, not only from people here, as well as from the Western world. That's a different setting, and we will have no future if we continue this kind of split thinking and reflection. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a great pleasure addressing you. Sorry, I don't know how many minutes I went over, but it's very important. I feel so passionate about it, and we have to really move forward. Stay green, think green, and act green. Thank you very much indeed. A pleasure.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for encouraging us. But as I said, you know, there is a difference between the scale and the scope. And when we talk about scale, absolutely some of the, and it's just not academic fallacy or anything like that. It's the practical experience that we have had here in our country. And just a small,
change that experience. India cannot stay with the past. India has
we will. Thank you for infusing so much of optimism. But we are really, really big, 1.4 billion people, and that's too large a size. But yes, we are ready to take up all the challenges, despite all the hurdles or whatever challenges we are going to have. We are going to succeed, certainly. Now, I invite the next speaker, Ambassador Shashank, who is former Indian ambassador to Denmark and Foreign Secretary of India. Former Foreign Secretary of India. Welcome to the panel discussion, sir. You joined us late. However, we had just started when you joined us. And my namaste to you, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sheetal, Ambassador Swan, Mr. Jal Koning, and of course, Kanchi. I'm very happy to join at this meeting. One example was given to me for development, sustainable development, by my friend from Denmark, who was a member of European Parliament. He said, when you start having migration, not from the rural to urban areas, but from urban to rural areas, then you can say that you have started developing really. My former president, Abdul Kalam, used to say that if your knowledge, you have gained enough knowledge, then you are developed. It's a question of personal knowledge. If you are not knowledgeable, if you are not studied well, then you remain underdeveloped. So I'm living in a small village, which is quite far away from Delhi, about 300 kilometers in the lap of Himalayas, and very cold, about 18, 19 degrees centigrade. So therefore, I would say that I'm following the example set by my MEP friend in Denmark. I was there about 18 years ago, or 20 years ago. And so I saw that Denmark had been an example, not for only developing countries, but for even the most developed countries. My friend, the ambassador of Japan, always told me that if one country from where we can learn in Japan is Denmark. We said, look, we will be quite happy to learn from Japan. I mean, you will keep learning from Denmark and we'll learn from you. That should be okay for us. But now that we find that we have a passionate ambassador in Ambassador Swan here in India, I have no doubt that we are likely to have a direct implementation of this green strategic partnership between India and Denmark. And I would be quite happy to see that this is developing. So sitting in my cottage in the Himalayas, I can see that, yes, things are moving well. I will also like to say that in wind energy, Denmark is really great. And they have developed so many new technologies on the wind energy side. And the wind atlas, I was told, is so accurate. Almost 200, 300 meters of the whole coastline was mapped by them. And any country which wants to have a strategic partnership with Denmark, I think it will be worthwhile for them to request Denmark to help us set up a wind atlas, even for India. On solar energy, we have done reasonably well. I think we are now number 2 or number 3 in the world. Though I remember 20 years ago when I requested the RISO National Laboratory in Copenhagen, I told them that they have developed some new technologies, increasing the efficiency of their solar cells, much more than what others were able to get. So they said, look, sorry, we don't have enough sun. So we are not working on that technology really. And we have closed that chapter. So they were not interested in doing it for themselves. So they even closed the department of the solar energy, as far as I remember. I do not know whether they were able to restart it. One very important reason, which is now very common between Denmark and India, I would say, Denmark had Malmö right next door across the horizon. And they had a nuclear power plant in Malmö. And if the wind blew towards Copenhagen, then the Danish people would be very unhappy. We have these winds blowing from China on one side, Pakistan from one side, and now recently from Afghanistan. We have to keep all those things in mind and see that at a time when India was being lectured by the countries in the West how to improve our democracy, they were sending all their companies to China to transfer all the technology to China. Now, fortunately, things have changed because now they want partnership with India. And this is one thing we would like to do, because if we go only to America, they will say, okay, military strategic partnership. We'll give you the drones, we'll give you the space technology and other kind of things. And in Afghanistan, they handed over everything to the Taliban, all the whatever equipment they had transferred there. And it was a unidirectional, a military strategic partnership, which really did not succeed. Therefore, we would like to have the great friendship with the United States, but we would like to have these strategic green or economic and other partnerships with countries like Denmark, countries like Japan, with Australia and others. And that is why we are thinking of alternative production chains, so that in case many companies want to move out of China, or if they want to have a very satisfactory base in a country from where we have a local market, we have a sustainable development goal idea in our mind, and at the same time, we can then build up linkages with the neighboring countries. And we have several of these partnerships which have been developed, whether in the SAARC or BIMSTEC or in whatever quadrilaterals and trilaterals, etc., etc. I would think that if we can leave it to our private sector, they can find the best partnerships between Denmark and India, and they should be able to do that. That should be number one, as far as I can see. Energy, yes. Waste treatment, I think Denmark, again, is very, very good, because I found that they were carrying out in the best areas 32 types of waste separation. And they suggested to us that, look, even if you start with 2 or 3 waste separation procedures, ultimately you will be able to clean up the area, and chemical wastage can then be treated in a different way. I mean, you have, of course, you are lucky that you have an island, uninhibited island, where you are using all the chemical waste is being disposed of. So we have to find out some areas where we can also try to dispose of the chemical waste without hurting the population or without hurting the our green goals. China had taken great advantage of the carbon credits. Now carbon credits are over. So we have to really think in terms of how we can do things without depending on all these various gifts from the UN system or from the international system. And we are quite willing to go according to the highest rigorous standards of accountability to our own people as well as to our international partners. But the fact is that basically it is not because what you will tell us, but what we have learned, and especially our present type of government, which has drawn a lot of lessons from its past, from the Hindu Sanatan culture. We are totally attached to our nature, to our environment, and to our cultural partnership, cultural heritage. I think therefore we cannot destroy it. If you look at our temples, which were set up 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, I mean, they have been done so perfectly. I think many of the modern architectural marvels also will not be able to carry out such accurate measurements as many of our temples, etc., have done. So we have something to, not only, we have to carry forward that idea and principle. It is only one thing I would say, that China is the only country which has openly accepted that whatever they have learned only one country, and that's India. It is a different matter. They have been able to further develop many of the Indian technologies. We have Kalari Pattu, which is the kind of their martial art. Chinese may have developed it further, but at the same time, they feel that contemplation, meditation, etc., which came to them from our Hinduism and Buddhism, and the martial arts which came to them from us, they have been able to develop it further because they got the basic things. And the issues like yoga, meditation, etc., they were developed by them into many other like Qi or other techniques, and they have benefited greatly. But many other countries have simply become quiet. Whatever they may have benefited from India, they say, no, we don't have anything from India. We have to look after them because they cannot take care of themselves. I think if you can now, at least the West can realize that if they try to develop other countries, whether in the form of Afghanistan, whether in the form of Pakistan or many other countries, I think it's much better to find those countries which have a domestic lobby, domestic civilizational continuity, and see that, yes, if we work with them, we can really have the sustainable development goals, strategic partnership for green development, which will be good for all of us. And I personally, since I lived in Denmark at a time when Danish people are looking forward to set up the ports in India, and they told me, they said, look, at least never shipping, Norwegian and Danish shipping, they said, look, we are in charge of the shipping area in the European community. And we depend too much on the Indian people as far as shipping is concerned. And therefore, they were very much interested in developing our ports, etc. So I hope that these are some of the other areas which we can think of. And Ambassador is there. And I think now I don't want to take up more time of yours. Thank you very much for inviting me and getting me to this wonderful conference. Thank you, Professor Sheetal. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashank sir, for giving a comprehensive view, not just of green strategic partnership, but other areas also where we can work together and possibly design ways for greater development. And now, finally, I invite Mr. Yal Crossing, Deputy CEO and International Director of Concito, which in Latin means I set in motion. So, Concito.
That's excellent, excellent translation. Thank you, Dr. Sharma. And let me just start by, first of all, express my sincere appreciation of being invited to this distinguished panel with the Ambassador Shashank and Ambassador Swane, and with the Kanchi Batras as well. It's really a great pleasure to have this opportunity to touch upon a very critical issue, I think, at a critical point in history as well. I am going to reflect, I think, on three different points. And the first one very much inspired by what we've heard already, which is about, basically science matters, numbers matter, or size matters very much. And then moving into some reflections around the green recovery after the COVID-19. And then moving on to areas of strengthening, our mutual collaboration, etc. So I would like to really start perhaps also first by congratulating the Diplomatist for its 25th year anniversary. It's a well done deed. You obviously play an important role exactly on the issue of trying to nurture collaboration between countries, because if there's anything that we depend on right now, it's really about sharing experiences, sharing technologies and approaches, and building development pathways that benefits both parties. And I think touching upon that issue of developing, it's very important to stress that climate change is unique in the extent that it makes us all developing countries. So it's not an issue of the traffic going one way, and one way to demonstrate this is simply to touch upon the degree to which both of our countries are vulnerable to what we're looking at in terms of the impact. Many people may not know, even in our own country, that Denmark actually carries the highest per capita cost from climate change related disasters since 1980 among the EU countries. We are in many ways, comparable with your neighbor, Bangladesh, low-lying country by the ocean, built on sediments. We don't have any rocks apart from one island down in the Baltic Sea. So we are extremely vulnerable to water coming in from all sides, whether it's from the sea level rise, which is now, according to the latest IPCC report, a model to possibly raise by 5 meters by the year 2300. So we're looking into, as Denmark, into a future which is extremely threatened because of climate change. So our urgency to act on climate change is not really just driven by interest in export or whatever you call it, but also a very altruistic kind of effort that we are calling upon here. We just saw also in India the extent to which you've been hit by cyclones and droughts, floodings to a scale that you've never experienced before. Given the composition, so to speak, of the subcontinent, you are also looking into the future which will dry up India unless we really get a much firmer hand on what's happening on the climate agenda. We just saw the International Panel on Climate Change coming out with a 6th assessment report, which really points to how serious the situation is looking right now. There is no pathway into the future for the world if it's not a decarbonized pathway over the next few decades. And in that sense, I totally agree with my compatriot, Ambassador Svane. If we do not find a solution on climate action and change that fits and suits and is adaptable to Indian context, there's no solution to what the world needs to do. So what we really should focus on here is to make sure that countries that are challenged from in their development pathways, that they're given the opportunities and the technologies and the experiences, etc., that are required for those countries to also build green growth based economies. So I think it really calls on the rationale for this strategic partnership, that it's mutual, it goes both ways. And I will also come back to another important issue, which is we have actually something to learn from you. But let's get back to that actually a little bit later. I would like to just comment a bit also on the COVID-19 pandemic and recovery and the opportunity that it has provided as a burning platform to reconsider our economic growth model as we move forward. We all know when you're standing on a burning platform, it's an opportunity out of just not wish, but also need to reassess what do we do from here that is different from what we did in the past. Something went wrong. We need to do something better. This is what the COVID-19 should mean for us. We're still struggling with addressing, the crisis of, saving lives, etc. It's not saying in any ways that this is not, a priority. It is a priority to save lives. But as soon as we come over, the rescue phase and looking into the recovery phase, it's really an issue to make sure that we build a foundation for an economy that can address not only climate change, but the sustainable development goals, and making sure that it's actually happening in an inclusive and sustainable manner. When you look at how a recovery finance has been spent in the world so far, early data indicates that by far the most recovery finance is going into supporting a continuation of fossil fuel-based economy. It's less than 20% of the $2.5 trillion that has been directed towards the recovery that is actually embodying a kind of a green action agenda. So I think it's also an issue for India to really consider right now how best to use that enormous recovery package that has been already put on the place in India. I must say, from the Danish context, we also did put together a recovery package, but that was honestly not green enough. There are other concerns that comes in, and you need to have investment grade plans and rate and so on that you can move on, quite frankly. We did advance as some infrastructure projects related to wind energy islands, or building renovation and some lighter touches upon advancing sustainable transport, etc. We definitely did not do enough, and there's still a huge call for a country also like ours to actually do more. Actually, 75% of the green recovery finance that actually came into the world here after COVID-19 has really emerged from only 6 countries. So it's a general trend that we're not making full use of the potential to build the growth model or the growth economy that is green for the future, because we have to realize, and again I'm agreeing with Ambassador Svane here, there's not only no contradiction between poverty eradication or economic growth on one side, and making sure that it's actually sustainable and based on green prerogatives on the other side. That's one of the reasons why we, within the Danish context, also the Danish Development Council, have adopted a new development strategy that is very much conditioning the economic growth and development on the basis of a green prerogative. Very much helped by the fact that the pricing technologies, whether it's wind or solar, very much helped on by the International Solar Alliance, the initiative that India has initiated. The prices on these technologies are coming down to with a scale and a speed that we had not anticipated just a few years ago. When looking into finding the areas that I think where we could strengthen our collaboration, evidently there are many issues on the energy agenda, and I totally agree on all of the Ds that you were put on the table before. I think there are definite areas there that needs to be addressed, but there are 2 other on these 2, maybe 3 other areas which I think is viable for strengthening our collaboration. One thing is in the cities agenda. Your Prime Minister Modi has initiated, I think it was back in 2015, the 100 Smart Cities Initiative. And we have initiated in Denmark a project which is called DK Denmark, DK 2020, which is a project in collaboration with C40, the global network of cities working for sustainability, that is really trying to develop development plans for at the municipality level in compliance with the Paris Agreement. So helping municipalities to actually do their contribution in building a local green economy, involving the citizens and the businesses and whoever relevant actors at the local level. So bringing together the experience that we have, each of the 2 countries, on how we build the cities of the future that are not only green, but also digitally smart, is an area that I think would both benefit both parties. Another area which I think is really critical for all countries, and especially maybe for countries like Denmark and India, is the effort or the need to make sure that we have the right skills in the workforce. One talks about a mismatch in the workforce, mismatch between what are the skills that the workforce has today and what are the skills that they need to have if we are to build the new economy. Very basically, we need to electrify. Everything has to be electrified. But do we have the electricians that can actually make it happen? Do we have the green hands, the green brains that can turn ideas and concepts into what happens in the villages or the businesses locally? That's a big issue if we are to really materialize the potential or the need for us to build green economies over over a few decades. So experiencing there, how we actually can share some approaches on addressing those skill sets in the labor force could be an area of mutual interest, I think. Finally, the last issue is, and you were mentioning it, Ambassador Shashank, the issue of finance. We are in Denmark, we have been quite successful in drawing in private sector finance from institutional investors or pension funds, etc., for in public-private partnership kind of based approaches. So the approach in terms of de-risking capital that goes into early marketing of technologies, etc., bringing efforts to scale, I think could be an issue where we could share experiences, maybe connected directly to the International Solar Alliance initiative, which is remarkable in its scale, but which is also facing the same kind of challenges that many of these global initiatives are facing, the lack of finance. And it is weird because we're living at a point in time where there has been never so much finance available. It's just not de-risked enough. We need capital to get out there and working or supporting the efforts of both companies and governments in building the green infrastructure of the future. So I think in the area of finance and de-risking finance, I think there could be a lot of opportunities in trying to work more specific on those issues. So finally, I'd like to close with what I said in terms of learning from you, which is we are very much often portrayed as a green leader in climate. And that's nice, it's fine, it's okay. There are historical reasons for it. Oil became very expensive. We've importing it from the Gulf countries, so we built these renewable energy technologies. We've now decided to close down our own oil production, which we did until recently. It will be closed down. So we're betting 100% on the green economy. But our lifestyles, our consumption patterns are very unsustainable. So if you actually look at the footprint of a Danish consumer, individual footprint of a Danish consumer, we are in the top 10 of the countries in the world that are leaving huge or exporting, you could say, footprints in terms of carbon, water, materials, and land use. So we also are placed at exactly the same point where many other countries are, that we need to change the way we use resources. And I think we need inspiration from countries on how you actually build thriving cities or thriving livability that is not so materially intensified. So can we develop these kind of models together with other countries, including India? It would be really great. So I think if we are talking Achilles heels for our countries and going forward, for us, it's our consumption patterns, and for India, surely it's still the coal that of course we need to decarbonize, or everybody needs to move away from over the coming decades. So a lot of areas I think we can strengthen our collaboration, and looking very much forward to discuss these issues. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jarl, for very passionate and candid expression of the problems that you face, and also not being very Eurocentric or in terms of accepting that yes, we are there, we have achieved it, but actually putting in front of the audience that what are the issues and urgencies that need to be addressed. And before I sum up this, I have already received a set of questions, and we'll be receiving them in the chat box now. And I'll take up question and answers, and would request the panelists to express their ideas or comments or answers to these questions. The first question that I have received is from Rasik Ravindra, who is member of CLCS. And the question states that, are there any specific fields of cooperation between India and Denmark identified for Arctic region in view of the anthropogenic impacts on climate change, as depicted in the AR6 report of IPCC? How is Denmark dealing with environmental problems of plastic and microplastic abundance in the ocean? I think, Jarl, you will take up this question.
I'm not sure I actually do have the answers, but I mean, if it comes to the plastic, let me just start with that. We are very much bound by EU legislation on plastics and plastic waste, and there we have new regulation out that actually is banning single-use plastic forms. So there's an effort in trying to make sure that we actually move away from using plastic to the scale and the level that we are. At the national stage, we have for a couple of years had a waste kind of management approach where you at the household level actually have to differentiate plastic waste from other sorts of waste as well. So it's been collected separately. I know that our big shipping companies are actually working on different concepts in terms of also trying to collect the waste from the oceans as they're already traveling that, but I don't really have the details around that issue. When it comes to the Arctic, I'm not aware that India is directly involved in direct collaboration in the Arctic scale, but maybe Ambassador Smana would know that, but not to my extent. I wouldn't be able to answer that.
I would request His Excellency to take this question also up, which I'm reading just now, because this also happens to be the area where you will be the best person to comment upon. And this question comes from Kopal Chobe Datta, Manager Research Engagement South Asia, Daikin University. And the question is, what kind of engagement do you view with India in renewable energy? Although it's asking for space also, but I think we'll just focus on renewable energy. So what kind of engagement do you view with India in renewable energy? What gaps do you identify in technology that Denmark can help fill?
Oh, thank you very much for this question. Sorry, we had a technical issue here, so I was not part of the many questions. But anyhow, as to this question, I think it's important to keep in mind that Denmark, in fact, was the first country helping India building up the wind industry. And we did that years back or decades back, where we helped India setting up a specialized agency dealing with onshore wind. And that's important because that was really the prerequisite for building up the onshore wind industry in India. Gaps are, of course, we are now looking into offshore wind. We know it's extremely costly, but we also know based on our experiences and experiences from other parts of the world that wind, offshore wind can be and should be seen from our point of view part of the energy mix of India, because you have at least two stretches in India. You have Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, where you can build up offshore wind farms. The big issue here is, of course, that those who are going to invest from our side in these kind of things, they will, of course, finance the setting up and the cables and substations and all that. But then the price of the electricity generated from these offshore wind farms is far higher than the price you can get in the market. So, I mean, I've been in fierce discussion with the sovereign funds or pension funds of Denmark, who claim they are green, and they are green, of course, but don't be mistaken about the fact they also want to make money. So they said, okay, we are putting up these things and India should embrace it all. And then, of course, there was the gap between the electricity price that they can produce at, and then the price you could get in the market. So I'll leave that aside. It's a small part of it. But what we are looking into now is how to build up this grid, because the energy grid needs to be very resilient and robust. And this is our experience. And we have Energy Net, which is kind of state-owned energy agency that is in control of our energy grid and so forth. and they are extremely good. And I think it's a gold mine for the rest of the world. We had a lot when I was in Japan, connecting this energy net with the Japanese side. So the grid will be the next big thing, and you have issues with the distribution companies out here. Therefore, we are really, really happy to see that the Indian government has launched some reforms that will reform the distribution companies, heavily indebted. And on the other hand, also create open access to the energy transmission grid. That's important. And there we would like to help India. And by the way, so I mentioned that our Minister for Climate and Energy is coming to India, and he will, with his colleague, R.K. Singh, he will inaugurate what we call the Center of Excellence for Offshore Wind. So we are helping India. We have been part of the early phases, and we are now inspiring, bringing our skills to India, and then we'll see how far it can be taken. I hope that was the answer.
Thank you very much, sir. And I'll pose this question to Ambassador Shashank, and this question comes from Shubham Chauhan, who is a research scholar at IIT Bombay. And he says, what we can learn from Denmark in implementing and providing eco-friendly culture. So.
One thing the Danish business experts found, that the Indian quest for spirituality was so good, and they introduced it in many of their MBA courses. And they set up partnerships with some of the Indian IIMs on this, especially IIM Bangalore, where they said that, look, if a management expert is learning only how to make money, he is not able to make money. But if he can really go beyond that for public good, for civilizational values, he would be able to make money as well as contribute to the betterment of the society. So I think that this is something where we have already been cooperating, and I'm talking about my experience of 20 years ago. I'm quite sure that many of these areas must have been explored further in the last few decades. So I think that is one thing on eco-friendly thing. And then secondly, as Mr. Shah said, that Denmark is a very low-lying country. I think the highest point in Denmark might be 300 meters or so. So if I'm somewhere about 2,000 meters right now, so I feel that really I'm too much high compared to the highest peak in Denmark. But I think this is important. So they are obliged to have eco-friendly technologies. If they did not do it earlier, now they will definitely do it. So therefore, these are partnerships which will be of great value to them as well as to us, because what they have best practices, we can give the scale, which they cannot have. So the scale they can find only in India. And therefore, it will be a good laboratory prototype which they can create. And in fact, I remember that even for coal, as we have been talking about how to reduce the coal footprint, that in Denmark, they have also these clean coal technologies, because there was a time when they used to depend on coal. Many of the European countries depended on coal, but then they developed this clean coal technology, and so we can share that with you. But then at that time, we were not interested. We said, no, we would like to have the coal because we cannot increase the cost by cleaning up the coal. And in the meantime, I find that most of the pet coke from United States is being imported into India. So that is the dirtiest coal which you can import or you can manufacture anywhere, and that we are importing the whole lot from America right now. But anyway, I think these are the things which we can learn from Denmark, because they are the closest friends of the Americans in the world. And if they know anything about America, they are the ones who know. So that is something which we can learn from them on being eco-friendly.
Thank you very much, sir. And this question I'll pose to Yal. And the question is from Bhavya Dehlawat. And the question is, what is your strategy to enter Indian market? Which states in India will be considered by companies of Denmark to enter India as a part of strategic green alliance, Yal?
Well, I thank you for the question. If I may just, before answering that question, reflecting on what Ambassador Shashank just responded to the previous question, I think one of the areas where I think we could also actually seek inspiration is where we need to look for it is the way we build the communities locally. We have been very much focused on a lifestyle model where we have each of our quotation palaces in a way, and we sit in the car, we go to work, go home. We see our old parents maybe once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and so finding forms a way we actually live closer together locally and are to a high extent depending on each other is also another way of actually trying to seek lifestyles that makes us more happy or create lives that are more livable, so to speak. So I think I'm really serious about this, seeking inspiration in terms of also the not, well, you could call this spiritual kind of lifestyles, etc., but less materialistic at least. When it comes to business strategies in terms of entering markets in India, I do represent a think tank. So we don't really move into taking over markets as such. But I would say one thing, which is as a think tank, we have a membership, which is unusual. And 1/3 of our members are businesses, and 1/3 are academia, and 1/3 is civil society organizations. So we're actually very closely associated with the biggest, greenest Danish companies. Of many of them are exporting, their technologies and insights, etc., solutions to Indian states. And it's always coming up when we start, when we discuss how can we, as knowledgeable institution or companies, not only actually sell our products and solutions, but actually contribute to development pathways in the countries where they're working. And one thing that I've noticed recently is that there's a lot of emphasis actually on water, and that they're working at the state level very much. That seems to be the approach. But mind you, I'm not representing a business. As a think tank, I would love to take over all Indian think tanks, and maybe we should put that in our business plans, but it's not really the approach we have.
Thank you, Yal. And next question I'll pose to His Excellency Freddie sir. And the question is from Professor Amparo Pamela from National Police College, Portugal. And the question is a very simple straight liner. What are the best practices in the green partnership? I think we have lost connection with His Excellency. Yal, would you like to take a call on this question? What are the best practices in this green partnership?
I can definitely give it a try. I mean, basically, my take would be that the best practice is to exactly move away from the talk to the action.
Yes.
Get it on the ground, see what actually works. This old-fashioned way that I think was dominating, thinking a few decades back where you could just translate one-to-one a solution from a developed countries to a developing countries like India. Those are gone. If we don't have solutions that can adapt to local context and address local concerns and be integrated into the local cultural way of actually building solutions, whether it's in business or government or working in communities or cities, etc., it doesn't work. So I think it's very important to really truly understand what are the contexts in which transfer of knowledge and experience are unfolding. If you don't get that kind of baseline right from the very start, I think you have the prescription for a disaster when you come down the road. So I think the best practice is simply fold out ears, fingers on the ground, and get a sense of what are the reality on the ground before you actually do too much else.
Shashank sir, now I'll combine 2-3 questions for you because they require a perspective from Indian side. One is from Professor Ram Bharose, and he's from Prayagraj, and he says how we can manage the greenery when the population density is so high. And I would add that Denmark has 6 million, which is almost 1/3 of Delhi's population. And we are 1.4 billion. And then there is one question from Lavanya Daya in the chat box, and it says, how can we ensure that this collaboration will go beyond urban areas to rural areas and more remote areas in India, and what kind of role civil societies can play here? And then there's one more from S.J. Sridevi. What are the effective renewable energy models that can satisfy the needs of a populous country? Say, for example, like India, sir. Sham, sir. Sorry, Shashank, sir.
Well, I would only say that this is really an we have been using for a very long time. That since our population is very high, we cannot take care of the remote areas, or we cannot really take care of the greenery, green cover in the country. Because if you look at the density of population, we are not really number one. There are several countries ahead of us, and many of them are developed countries. I think I would name only two of them, Singapore and Holland. And they have some excellent technologies which they're using for water management, for resource management, and to make sure that the green cover is increased. For example, some of my friends went to Holland and they said that, look, if you stay in a hotel and if you do bicycling during your spare time, you are given reduction in the hotel cost, because then you are able to generate some energy which goes into the grid of the hotel. So there are all kinds of new ideas which have come up. So why can't we think of in Prayagraj, I mean, really I think our university people should come up with these philosophies as to the green cover should be maintained, definitely. And it's not necessary to remove the green cover to take care of all the needs of the population. I'm quite sure that there are methods which can be taken care. We should find out, as somebody else asked from Portugal, as to what are the best practices. So we can find out from whether Denmark or other countries, especially those with higher density of population, city-wise or country-wise, and see how they have been able to take care of their problems and keep the sustainable development goals in mind. I'm quite sure that we should be able to do that. And we really need, especially academic people, they need to study and bring it into the practical field as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashank, sir. And finally, because of paucity of time, I'll club 2-3 questions for His Excellency. He's back with us on the panel. And Freddie, sir, there's one comment which has come, and this is a BAIF Development Research Foundation, is a reputed civil society for almost 5 decades working in the field of rural development, blending science and technology, and they're interested in exploring any technology and project partnership. Number one, please register this in your mind. They might get in contact with you. And the second question is that, which is a general question. They want you to comment on India-Denmark bilateral relations, which is not the focus of the discussion right now, but then within that broad area of the bilateral relationship, what is the future of green strategy between India and Denmark, sir? Freddie, sir, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me say from the very outset, whoever would like to connect with us and looking for a partnership, working towards the green future, we are ready. So they can just contact me, and then we will connect and see what we can do. Let me just also say a few words about the rural India. And we believe that the future of India very much lies with the rural districts. That's why we, this year, in fact, launched a special program with UNOPS, which is a small UN organization headquartered, in fact, in Copenhagen, and Jal Shakti. So we set aside quite a big amount of money, at least in a Danish context, for supporting 11 districts in UP in their implementation of the Jal Jeevan mission. And Jal Jeevan mission is really focusing on bringing tap water to the rural household. So we are working with the rural districts, and we sincerely believe that in order to avoid a little bit too many people moving to the urban centers, then we have to strengthen the infrastructure. We have to help people getting a better livelihood in the rural India. And that's what we are doing as well. The future of the Green Strategic Partnership, yeah, but there can only be one answer to that: to secure that we reach the goal that we would like to have, and we are forced to reach, namely a far better, greener, and sustainable development. And we will bring in our skills to India. We're not telling India what to do, but we would like to inspire India. And all our companies, they are out here. They're not just seeing India as a marketplace to sell their products. They are investing here. They are creating jobs. And one thing which many people often tend to forget is that if you invest in a green technology, you are in fact also creating a lot of new permanent jobs. And India being one of the, demographically at least, one of the youngest nations on earth, you need to create tons of jobs every month. And the best recipe here would be to combine your development, the sustainability, and activating your younger generations in that trajectory. That's a green future. That's why we really decided on this Green Strategic Partnership. It's a different approach. It's not about really bringing Denmark and India to, closer together. This is to develop a recipe, a platform for a far better future. And we know that India has to be part of the equation. That's why we decided to work with India. And of course, India decided to work with us. That's the future. And that's where we are heading towards.
Thank you, sir. There are many questions and comments in the chat box and Q&A box as well. And I've done justice to most of them. However, because of the paucity of time, we have to wind up this session also. So as a chair to conclude our discussion today and what we got from the panel. Freddie sir, yes, I agree that India is youngest nation and the oldest civilization. And it's a perfect combination, to move on to the path of development with as much as energy and enthusiasm that we can have. Now, if we look at and calculate the per capita damage done to the environment and climate, there is no statistics that can justify even a slightest damage done to the environment. Because I agree with Shashank sir, when he says that in our civilization, the attitude towards environment, climate, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one statement summarizes it all. That how we have used our environment, our climate, in the very fact that we do not differentiate between humanity and the nature out there. But unfortunately, as the material density has gone up because of industrialization and development, somewhere the value system has got diluted, and this does not get reflected in the way we treat our nature, the way we treat our climate, and the greater issues. Now, yes, I agree, y'all, that size and numbers do matter, because they are actually bringing about a substantial change. And even if we calculate, even if we have a small per capita damage done, in a large population, that's greater than the greater damage done to the in a lesser number. So we have to keep into account that what are the local solutions to the global problems such as climate change. And finally, I would say that yes, post pandemic, this was one of the areas which was supposed to be discussed, and y'all, thanks for bringing it. And there is a cut elastic campaign which has begun, because of these masks that we wear, and there's an elastic, and a lot of this is going and ending up in the oceans, damaging them and polluting them to the large extent. And because the animal and the fishes, they face a problem with this elastic getting entangled in their beaks or necks, or almost killing them, fatal in some cases. So pandemic also has thrown open many challenges to the already existing urgency of tackling the climate change. And finally, I would say that yes, the countries which are low-lying countries, or the sea lines or shorelines, whatever you can say, there's an urgency to address these needs, no matter how much high you rate yourself up on the developmental scale. It's actually the substantive outcomes that matter at the end of the day, because climate is going to spare none, despite who you are or any community, race, or religion. Thank you very much for being there on the panel. And I thank all the participants, those who have made this discussion very lively. And I'm honored to be with all of you once again. Thank you, Diplomatist. And Kanchi, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Sharma. I wish to thank all the speakers, partners, and our participants for making this discussion a success. It was indeed, and I mean it, very engaging. As Ambassador Freddie said, that it is the first time that Denmark and India have concluded such a partnership of this sort, elevating ties to green strategic partnership. Today, we ask all of you to be architects of a better world. And let me wish you sustainable, inclusive, and rewarding business and the best of the welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.